Hey everyone, this is the Try to Hit the Pool podcast. I'm here with Pear Joseph, and we're talking about everything to do with manhood, gender ideology, and the trans issue as it is. So, just to kind of get started, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yeah, so I got kind of pulled into this whole gender and trans talk because when I was a child, when I was in kindergarten, I told my mom that I was a girl trapped in a boy's body um, because everyone around me was always telling me that everything I liked, clothes, toys, were quote unquote girl things. And thankfully, my mom took me to a therapist and I was not affirmed. And thankfully got over the rest of
Oh,
my sorry.
sorry, I lost you a bit there. So just from the therapist.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so thankfully my therapist and mom did not affirm me, and I got over my gender confusion when I was 6 or 7. And I went through the rest of my life just being a secure as a non-conforming gay man. And in when this whole gender ideology thing came around, I was really disturbed by a lot of the videos I was seeing go viral of quote unquote trans kids who were very clearly just little versions of me, little proto gay boys. And I also was frustrated by the whole non binary thing happening. I thought that myself and other progressives and liberals were on the same page as far as believing there was no wrong way to be a man or woman. But suddenly everyone was, because I'm stereotypically feminine, I'm not really a woman or vice versa. And coming out as, whatever gender identity, gender
Well, so
fluid, non-binary.
what do you think about kind of all of that with the way that that's swung? Because I always found that really interesting that they kind of have this dual idea of boys can do anything girls can do, and girls can do anything boys can do. But if you pick the wrong color, then you're a girl.
Yes, exactly. It's completely hypocritical. If you were to go up to any of these people and say, do you think it's wrong for a boy to wear makeup, for example, they'd say, oh my gosh, of course not. But then some of those exact same people will say, the reason why I'm not a man is because I wear makeup. So the whole thing is completely hypocritical. And yeah, when all that started happening, I just, I bit my tongue for a while trying to avoid cancellation, but it just kept getting crazier, and the women's rights erasure kept getting crazier, and all these, minors transitioning just kept growing, and I couldn't bite my tongue anymore. So I first started, well, I was posting about it just on my private social medias for a while and basically losing all my friends because of it.
How's that been? Like, I mean, I know you're going to go into it, but how has that kind of the response been when you were initially just talking about it amongst your friends? Like, how did they kind of react?
I lost the majority of my friends. I grew up in Massachusetts and I now live in Los Angeles. So they're both, pretty liberal states where people are super sucked into all of this. Yeah, I've called a bigot and a transphobe by everyone. I shouldn't say not everyone. I thankfully kept a few.
Well, I've noticed that I have a few people who stick by, but they tend to want to be kept very quiet that they're sticking by you. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I have the few close friends I did not lose. Yeah, they're not so willing to, reshare or repost anything I'm doing, which is understandable. People lose their jobs over this stuff too, so I can be sympathetic with
Do
that.
you think it's getting better at all in towards because in the UK it has changed a lot in the last couple of years in that the conversation's got a little bit more normalized. Is it kind of a state by state thing in America still?
It is a state by state thing. Obviously, California is like super, quote unquote woke. But in just within the last 6 months, I don't know if it was the election or what it was, I have seen a lot more people getting braver and speaking out about this stuff. So Yeah, I've noticed a very noticeable difference on social media with more people um, admitting to their, I guess, what you would call gender critical views about this. So there's a little improvement, but in Southern California, you're just a bigot, if you say anything that's not completely affirming.
And I've noticed it a bit on social media with you lately. It's people. That thing you posted today was about people were misgendering you to say you were a she. Do you get that a lot as well when you were saying that you weren't for all the trans stuff? Did you get the kind of because I got it a bit as well where people were like, well, you'll stop resisting eventually. And which is really kind of creepy thing to say. But like I don't know if you got the same thing in your kind of real life as well.
I get it almost every day of my life. I'm called she, her everywhere I go. Um, Amongst, coworkers or people who I'm meeting for the first time, they're always kind of like, so what are your pronouns? Like trying to be careful, not say the wrong thing, which again, I understand because they've seen, the backlash you get if you say the wrong thing. But what's crazy is a lot of people, even after I explain to them, I'm just a man. I like to have an androgynous look because I just like the way that looks, but I'm still a man. A lot of them still will be like, oh, but have you searched non-binary? I think you're non-binary. Or like, oh, you're probably gender fluid. You should look that up. I've even had a couple of people say, just not online, to my face in person, that they think I'm a trans woman in denial.
Wow, it's so weird how people want to like pathologize it and kind of make it when it's people are just kind of themselves. I mean, what that does lead me into the second question, which is like, what do you think that people most get wrong about the trans movement?
So much, but the main thing is that people, I don't know how we can even ever fix this, but people truly believe that there is such thing as being born trans. They don't understand that it's a decision people make for various reasons: sexual abuse, being gay and having a hard time fitting into society as a very feminine boy, autism, paraphilia. There's all these different pathways into transition, but it's not like a type of person. There's nobody who's just born trans. And so people just can't wrap their mind around that.
Why
That's the main thing.
why do you think all of this is like? Do you think it's kind of leftover remnants of people feeling bad about the historical grievances of like the gay movement or something? Like, where do you kind of place the reason that people are so strange about it?
Well, it's two things. One is liberals and Democrats and the LGBT community needed a new movement. They created their entire group identity around being victims and around being oppressed. And so when gay rights was achieved, they needed something else. And GLAAD wasn't going to just stop making billions of dollars. They needed a new fight. But also, I think a lot of people are just more sexist than they realize. They they won't admit this, but they're not actually comfortable with men being effeminate. It's almost easier for them to digest if you say I'm a girl trapped in a boy's body than just I'm a man who is feminine. They even quote unquote progressives they aren't actually as willing to accept that. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's the paraphilia and the cross-dressing and the creep factor, or I don't know what it is, but yeah.
When you said they kind of, I mean, would you, since all of this, like talking about it, would you have said your political views have changed, or do you think that they've changed the way that they think about things?
I have not changed. I'm basically a 2015 version of a liberal. Since I was 7 years old, once I got past this, my gender confusion, I haven't changed my opinion. I think men and women can be whatever they want. They can look like whatever they want, act however they want, or have whatever personality they have. I have not changed. The rest of the party completely flipped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get called conservative now, and all I say is stop erasing women's rights and stop mutilating children. So for that to be
That's pretty
conservative just doesn't
reasonable
even make
view.
sense.
Yeah.
It's pretty neutral, like common sense
So
point of
when
view, but
you know your so you talked about the gender confusion. When did that start? And it sounds like it was kind of related to outside factors in a sense of people putting stuff onto you. And would you agree with that or?
yeah, I'm one of those gay boys who was straight out of the womb, clearly clearly very effeminate. I actually have a twin brother who's straight and stereotypically masculine. And as far back as my memories go, I remember noticing how people responded to him versus me. A lot of people had good intentions. They were trying to avoid me getting bullied. They weren't, it's not like they were super homophobic, that my family members and stuff. But they would say, why are you wearing that? Don't you know that's a girl thing? Don't you know that's a girl toy? Um, some of my earliest memories are of when I was preschool age and noticing when I first, was meeting a lot more kids my age, how they responded to my twin brother versus me. They were all saying, that's weird. Why are you playing with that toy? Why that's a girl thing. That's a girl thing. That's a girl thing. And so eventually, by the time I was either 5 or 6, that message had really gotten my brain. And I just thought, well, I guess I must be a girl then if everything I like is a girl thing.
Is your brother identical twin or just normal twin?
Fraternal, not identical.
Okay, yeah, no, so you could be part of a twin study. No, so the it's very much. I mean, what I hear is like it's very much society putting gender onto people, and then something subjective, and then kind of trying to treat it with like an objective treatment.
Completely, yeah. I mean, even the criteria they use to diagnose it makes no sense because 2 of the 8 criteria are sex-based. It's about being uncomfortable with your secondary sex characteristics, but the rest are all just societal. It's toys, clothing, playmates, which, the things that are considered like clothing, if you were born in a tribe somewhere, you would think it was normal to walk around naked. It's, there is no such thing as male clothing. It's just, it changes culture to culture, decade to decade. So for things like that to be used to say that someone is actually the opposite sex doesn't even make any sense.
Well, they're kind of arbitrary, aren't they? They don't really mean. They are just put on by society, like you said. They don't really mean anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what? Third question is what does manhood mean to you?
Not much, to be honest. I, you know, these questions are asked a lot in this whole gender conversation. Like, what does womanhood mean? What does manhood mean? I'm a man because I'm an adult human male. Beyond that, I think men and women are blank canvases. Of course, there are biological traits, sex drive, aggression, things like that are real for the most part in men and women. There might be some anomalies, but I don't know this, as far as I don't really think of myself, not that I don't think of myself as a man. I know I'm a man because of biology, but as far as like, what is manhood or like, what does it mean to me? It doesn't, I'm just myself. I think of myself as an individual.
I think that's pretty reasonable and actually a lot more common than people kind of think. People really do. There's a lot of people who want everything to fit into a rigid category, and it's kind of not what the human experience actually is.
Yes. Yeah. Even again, going back to the non-binary thing, I see a lot of people who try to explain why they're non-binary and they say, well, I don't feel like a man or a woman. I just feel like me. And I don't think they realize that's how everyone feels.
I don't think there's like the manliest men aren't like, the stereotypical ones aren't walking around going, girl, I'm a man all the time. They're just doing stuff.
They're just living their life with the personality they have. Yeah. Women aren't like, thinking about makeup or cooking for their husbands 24/7. Like everyone has their own individual personalities. So yeah, all this talk about manhood and womanhood and what it means, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah. You've kind of already said this a bit, but how has your experience been talking about this publicly? And I guess you talked a lot about your experience in kind of your private life, but how has it been like Twitter and all of that sort of stuff in general? Because I know we kind of covered it a bit already, but if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, actually, so I did a Jack Jewel podcast about a month ago, and now I'm working with the LGBT Courage Coalition, testifying in court, trying to pass some bills that would make medical transition illegal for minors. I have another podcast coming up after this. So I've been gaining a lot of followers recently, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive, surprisingly. There's, of course, always the gender ideologues who are crazy and upset, but I've actually received so many DMs, more than I expected, from specifically moms saying, like, you're what my son should have been. Like, he got sucked a feminine gay boy, but I couldn't pull him out, and I see him so much in you. And it's really sad, the messages I've got from parents who are like, this is what my son should be.
That's something that really kind of got me as well, because there's some people who have like similar experiences with, I was out in Tokyo and people coming back. Those sort of messages are what, like, initially when I started talking kept me going, because it's you realize how hurt people are. And I think before I came into this conversation, you don't really realize everyone's kind of in it because they care. There's not many people who are here just because they're angry.
Yeah, totally. People they might be angry about like the women's rights erasure and things like that, but most people, either they have a family member who is pulled into this, or they just genuinely care about gay people and they see how that's, affected the LGBT community. Or even, there's a lot of focus on gay kids, even obviously with what I talk about, but straight boys are getting sucked into this too, these kind of autistic, maybe quote unquote nerdy boys feel lost in the world or feel like they can't be masculine enough. A lot of people have sons like that, and they're getting sucked into it too, and everyone's just looking for a way to help pull them out of it.
What other than making it illegal for kids, what other things do you think that we could push, I guess, societal wise, to make it so people are more comfortable with themselves? Like, is there anything that kind of adults could be doing proactively outside of the government, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to how you speak to your children about toys and clothes like that. I think when I was growing, how old are you?
I'm 31.
Okay, so yeah, I'm 30. We're like the same age.
Yeah.
I think when we were growing up, I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm assuming it was probably the same. I think girls, for the most part, were allowed to be tomboys. They might have got some annoying comments like, oh, you should try to be prettier.
I mean, I remember the word tomboy being thrown around a lot more than it is now.
Yeah, girls, almost all the women in my family, none of them were quote unquote girly girls. They were sporty or just not interested in makeup. And, recently, since gender ideology has gone crazy, now those girls are all thinking that they're either trans or non-binary. But prior to that, I think we were doing okay with letting girls be the way they want. So we need to go back to that when it comes to women or young girls. Just let them be tomboys. But I don't think there's ever really been much acceptance of very feminine boys, and you see it even from conservatives who are supposedly so against this gender stuff. They'll then post online or say something about, like, in response to a gay man wearing makeup, like something very critical, and they don't understand that commentary is leading gay boys to think they should be trans. So even a lot of the very gender critical feminists will accuse a man wearing makeup of doing woman face, even if he completely acknowledges that he's a man and he's just like a gay makeup artist or something. So it's like coming from everyone, all different sides are telling boys that there's something wrong with them if they're feminine in any way. So yeah, parents just need to understand that the messaging that you give, even if you have good intentions, like my family did, they thought that they were preventing me from being bullied by trying to make me be more masculine. But the message I was getting was that there was something wrong with me that needed to be fixed, you know?
And what do you think about? Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And but what do you think about the idea that it's kind of thrown around a lot that it's like left-wing conversion therapy, the trans thing in a sense?
Well, it is a form of conversion therapy with specifically the homosexual type of trans. I mean, there's other countries where they do that, where it's illegal to be gay, and so they make their feminine boys into girls.
Mm.
It is a form of conversion therapy, but also that's just one of the pathways into being trans. Not every trans person is gay. There's all kinds of reasons people get sucked into this.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question would be, we've already covered this, so I'll just move on. Okay, so a lot of the gender criticals talk a lot about AGP, and it feels like it's become, I don't know if you're familiar with like r/egg.
I don't think so.
So that's the trans. It's like the pro-trans Reddit, but it's literally, you'll say things like, you like strategy games, therefore trans. You ate an orange. It gets to like you ate an orange level, you're therefore trans. And I feel like a lot of the things thrown around with AGP are getting to that same level with the gender criticals. In that they kind of start just labeling every decision a trans person makes as AGP. What is your opinion on the whole Blanchard theory?
I 100% agree with what you just said. I think, again, prior to the gender ideology craze in the last 10 years, I do think Blanchard's theory was 95% accurate when it comes to describing the types of males who get into this. I think it's pretty spot on. It's not 100% accurate all the time, but I do think it's pretty spot on. But I agree with you that we went from one extreme to the other, to people not knowing what autogynephilia was, to now they think any trans-identified male is an autogynephile. And I mean, I saw Dylan Mulvaney get called an autogynephile recently, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
It makes sense. Yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's coming from women, self-proclaimed TERFs, and I really, really, really sympathize with them. I'm on their side as far as keeping men out of women-only spaces. They have a lot to be rightfully angry about, but I think some of them get really sucked into these online spaces talking about these things like sexual paraphilias, and I think some of them just lose the plot. Like they then lash out at they lash out at me, saying that I'm a sexual deviant, like pervert, like clearly just trying to achieve some sort of sexual gratification or fetish. And it just doesn't even make any sense. I'm like, no, I'm just a sissy boy. Like, it's not. Yeah. So we've gone from one extreme to the other with the autogynephilia conversation. There's so much more to think about, like why men are getting sucked in, or teenage boys, young adult men are getting sucked into this. And when you just brush it off as all of them are perverts, you're not helping them, and you're also not helping the overall cause.
And also it's kind of a reductionist view of the theory in general, because it's you've read the footnotes, you haven't really looked into the research that's been done since or anything like that. It's a very simplistic way of viewing it when they kind of just label everything as a fetish, because it's not, even in the fetishistic side of it, it's not really that simple.
Yeah, autogynephilia it's a very complicated thing. It even goes into pseudo bisexuality, and like it's just like so complex. And yeah, a very large percentage of trans-identified males are autogynephiles, but there's also this new batch of straight boys, like the ROGD boys, who it's not that, and they're getting labeled as autogynephiles. It's either like the whole toxic masculinity thing, and they're trying to avoid getting labeled as, the evil cis het white man, or they're just very. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, what I was going to say is when I look at the theory and for the HRTS or the homosexual variant, it says that they do it for societal pressures, and I find it hard to not see that the societal pressures that they talk about kind of do it also exist for straight boys now too. Like there's an argument to be made that obviously it's not about mate selection, but in the way that you said about like not wanting to be labeled as the toxic masculinity, wanting to find a social role, all of those things would be some form of kind of uh, an adaptation rather than just a pure AGP fetish.
100%. That, like I said, that's why prior to 10 years ago, I think Blanchard's, um, I think he was pretty right on the money. But since then, we've had the whole Me Too movement. We've had all this talk about toxic masculinity, and rightfully so. Like there was a lot of work to be done in those areas, and we did make a lot of progress for women in some ways, but then it's that pendulum. It goes too far one way, too far the other, and then there's just so much hatred for men, and young straight boys are getting that message that they're evil, that their sex drive is evil, or they just want to avoid getting canceled when the only people who are allowed a voice are people who check off every minority group box. Of course, and it's the cis het white men who are the only ones not allowed to even give political opinions or anything without being completely dismissed. Of course, boys are going to start saying, okay, well, maybe I don't want to be that.
Yeah, I think it's natural to look at some. I have as kind of incentive based. So this does actually lead me perfectly into the next question, which is: do you think there is a right time / kind of reason that someone could transition?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Sorry. Do you think there's a right time or reason that someone could transition?
That's hard. I mean, my opinion on adults transitioning has changed a lot within the last year. Well, first of all, obviously I don't know how we would put this into, policy or make it legal, but 18-year-olds are technically adults, but an 18-year-old is a child, mentally. I would say once your brain is done developing at 25 or 26, and you can really, think about long-term decision making and how it's going to affect you in the long term. I used to be of the opinion that adults should have bodily autonomy, and if they decide once their brain's done developing that this is right for them, that they should. And it's not that I completely disagree with that now. It's just it's the whole women's spaces issue. You can say, okay, this 27-year-old decided this is right for them or him. This is kind of specifically a male to female issue.
Yeah.
And if it works for him and if he's not infringing upon anyone else's rights, then it's okay. And I'm like, to a certain extent, yes, but where is he going to the bathroom if there is no third, single person bathroom available? You're creating problems in society. Not all women are going to be okay with you, even if you are harmless. They don't know that. And also, it's all of the terrible side effects of hormones and these treatments. Again, in a sense, if I feel like if an adult wants to do that and they know the side effects and they choose to do it anyways, there's part of me that thinks that's okay, but then there's another part that feels like no doctor should be signing off on this. We know that it's bad for you. And just because it's an adult doesn't mean that a doctor should do something bad to an adult. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is a really hard one because it's like I guess I land on like there should just be more mental health checks than there currently are, because it's far too easy to get prescribed the stuff. It's, especially as an adult, it's far too easy to just jump on it, and it seems like there's more checks for things like a boob job than there are for stuff like this in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people now who have said that they went right into Planned Parenthood and walked out with a prescription, for hormones. It's just way too easy. Yeah, I don't have a concrete decided decision on adults transitioning yet, but it for sure needs to be a way, way, way smaller percentage of people being allowed to do it for sure.
And do you think the increase in it, I mean, you mentioned a lot of like the factors for young people, but in adults, do you think it's to do with like, I guess the word acceptance is wrong, but do you think it is to do with like the growing trend of it, or like the idea that you get accolades
Oh,
or
you
something like that?
froze.
Oh, sorry, so did you. Oh, there we go.
Sorry.
No, yeah. Do you think it's like to do with the fact that people get societal accolades, or what? What do you think is causing the rise in it specifically? If you can say one specific thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's one specific thing. There's so many reasons people do it. Um, the oppression points is a big one. I mean, you're in the UK. I mean, in America, I don't know how different it is. I'm, relatively aware of UK politics, but not super well informed. In America, especially when Biden was in office and Trump's first presidency, the whole identity politics and Marxism and oppression scale, all of that was huge here. Like, it can't be stressed enough how hard it was for anyone who doesn't check off minority points to even be allowed to speak. So there's a lot of adults who want to avoid that. There is a paraphilia aspect with adult men who transition that can't be ignored, even though it is being focused on too much now. Um, and this is going to sound very negative of me, but within the LGBT community, a lot of people, gays and lesbians, really like being different. They actually found they made being an oppressed victim their identity, not just being gay, but being the underdog who's part of a progressive fight, part of a movement. Like, they actually really liked that back in the gay rights movement. So then when they achieved their rights, they almost had an identity crisis because now I'm not the underdog victim anymore. And so I'm seeing a lot of just regular gays and lesbians coming out, not even changing their look, but just saying, oh, I'm non-binary now. And I do think that's a big part of it too, is people really want to be victims. They want to feel like they're a part of something, that they're sticking it to, I don't even know what, the patriarchy, I don't
Some
know
sort
who.
of, right? Yeah, but
Yeah,
sticking it to whoever that person is over there. Yeah.
right. Even if the government is completely in line with it, so it doesn't even make any sense.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Okay, so I guess so. Kind of final question, which is, if you could tell your younger self something, what would it be?
That there's no wrong or right way to be a boy or a girl. That your life is whatever you want it to be, whatever you want it to look like, and that choosing to be a non-conforming man, both in physical appearance and style, but also personality, it is a harder path to take. I'm not going to say that it's easy. Finding your way in society is more difficult as a feminine man, but it's reality and it's the truth. And, your life is going to look different than the average person's. But that's a good thing. There a lot of little feminine boys, if they're allowed to just grow up to be gay boys, a lot of them become creative types. They have a really eccentric, colorful, interesting life as a photographer or a makeup artist or something like that. So I would just tell my young self to stick it out. It's all going to work out in the end.
That's really good. Thank you so much, and no, best of luck and all the stuff. And where can people find you?
X, TikTok, and Instagram is at the Pear Joseph, and Substack is just Pear Joseph.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.